A chatbot serves as a really good introduction to event-driven programming because a conversation really can't be programmed as a sequence of statements. I can't just say every good chatbot must first say this, then that, then that. Instead, I really need to structure my program and my thinking differently. I need to think about how this chatbot can respond appropriately to input that I might have no control over. So this chatbot code that I gave you has a structure that's very similar to the code you'll write in the project at the end of this lesson. And I'd like to just walk through some of the important parts now. So in this cell, we have this class, event-driven chatbot. And I'll walk through more of the wiring and how this all works in a second. But for now, I'm just going to press Shift and Enter to execute that cell. And now I'm going to put my cursor in here. And I just want to demonstrate the interface to this chatbot that a consumer of this class might be using. So the first thing I want to do is instantiate it. Just like this. And now I'm going to start sending messages to the chatbot through the handle message method. So here I'm going to send it the message, hi. I'm going to press Control and Enter. And sure enough, the chatbot says hello back. Next, I'm going to do something a little more interesting. I'm going to ask the chatbot its age. And as you can see, it actually responded with two different statements. First, it said it's 38 seconds old. And then it gave me this more precise definition of its age with the seconds and the number of microseconds. And under the hood, that's because there are actually two callback functions which were associated with this input message, age. Now, let's walk through the wiring to understand how this all works. So I'm going to scroll up and first just start with this handle message. So as you can see, it checks this accepted messages dictionary to see if this particular message is understood by the chatbot. And if it's not, then it just apologizes and says, I'm sorry, I don't understand your message. But let's say that doesn't happen, because otherwise it first collects all of the callback functions associated with this message. And then for each of those callback functions, well, it just calls that method. And so maybe you can start to see why callback is really an appropriate name for these sorts of functions. When I said hi to the chatbot and it responded hello, that's because some callback function that prints hello must have been called. And in fact, if we scroll up, you can see this respond to greeting function does exactly that. And when I ask the chatbot its age, and it responded with two messages, well, that's because both of these functions were associated with that input message, age. So let's jump up to the constructor for this class to understand how these messages actually got wired to these functions. And as you can see, in this init method, and that's just Python syntax for this is the constructor. This is going to be called when you do event-driven chatbot parentheses. So this is the constructor, and you can see initially it just creates this empty dictionary of accepted messages. It sets its birth time, which is used in the calculation of the age. And then all of the wiring, all of the registering of callbacks happens down here. And sure enough, this message age is registered to two callbacks, just like we'd expect. Respond to age request and the detailed version of the same function. Now, let's just dig into register callback so we can see what it does. As you can see, the docstring tells us what it does, as did the function name, but it doesn't do much that's too fancy. First, it checks to see if this message is actually already handled by this accepted messages dictionary, and if not, it associates a value for this message, which is just an empty list. We're going to populate that list with callbacks, and as you can see, that's what happens here. We append the newest callback onto that list. Now, the reason I showed you this code is not because I think it's important that you learn about chatbots. It's because a chatbot provides a really good intuitive understanding for why you might even want to use event-driven programming to begin with. And a little later in this lesson, you're going to work with some code that's very similar, except instead of processing text from a user, we're going to be processing messages from the autopilot about our drone's location, velocity, and so on. So let's walk through some of that code right now.